Hello and welcome back. Northstar here with another cell to Singularity. Let's play. I hope you folks are all doing well today. I am pretty tired. Could be because I sometimes sleep poorly with long COVID. Could be because family that I'm staying with, thanks to having to do so due to long COVID, not respecting my sleep, making tons of noise, even when they know that I'm sleeping all kinds of weird hours because the insomnia this disease causes. Um, Regardless, I'm pretty exhausted right now. And top that off, had to deal with a phone call with um, trying to get the government to actually do their job and enforce the law against an employer who did not pay in their payroll taxes in the past. I would remind you folks, the government is not your friend. Not the politicians, not the bureaucrats. Conservatives are like, oh, you're a small government. No, no. The government under our current state of affairs is controlled by a handful of very rich people. Um, that is inherent to capitalism, which needs to end. But as long as capitalism is the system, government can't be trusted because it's very often been captured by the very rich. I mean, sometimes it can, but not in the U.S. The U.S. system is so fucked; it's ridiculous. Um, maybe if you live in Norway or something, or France, people still have some control left over their government, although France has dealt with Macron, who's rich, connected, little pampered asshole from banking family, or banking background, rather. Not a family isn't born to it, but his family isn't like, I guess family isn't the right word, a banking clan, organization, background. Anyways, um, trying to force neoliberalism down the throats of the French. Neoliberalism, for those who are not aware, is not a liberal. It is not liberal as in left wing for dumb, stupid American political terms that uh, are the opposite of what terms really mean. Liberalism refers to the lack of government regulation, the lack of welfare programs. It is what Americans might call conservative politics. I'm American myself, but I've come to realize we use the terms, freaking wrong. Not just come to realize, I've learned. This is a fact. You can research it. Look it up. The terms are used wrong in the United States, just incorrectly. And it's important to use them correctly so people outside this country will understand what the heck we mean. Liberalism refers, as I said, to minimal government. Classical liberalism was the original form. Neoliberalism is the reborn, revised form that's even more in love with capitalism in the so-called business perspective than in the past. It's got somewhat different rhetoric, but it's really just a zombie ideology. Classical liberalism was defeated back in the day because it was proven to be incredibly stupid and to lead to society collapse. But it worked very well for a handful of rich people, so they revived it as neoliberalism, funding the Austrian School of Economics and such. My belief that liberalism has that's fit into our modern perspective is the idea that somehow uh, academia and politics and such is just a debate of ideas and the best ideas win. That's a load of bullshit. People with money can corrupt the process. They can amplify certain voices and suppress others, and they've done that within economics and political science, as well as the political arena. So that ideas they're blatantly wrong get amplified, and people pointing out how they're wrong just get silenced. Even though, for instance, the original neoliberal economists were laughed at as being dumbasses who didn't know their shit by Keynesian economists who had a much better understanding of how economics truths, of economic principles, and had a set of theories that are much closer to economic truth. But the rich just kept pouring money into this libertarian, neoliberal, right-wing economics and pushing incorrect theories over correct ones just by amplifying them so much it drowned out the more credible, more accurate theories. So Keynesian theories are not perfect, obviously, but they are more accurate than any liberal right-wing economic theories at all. They come closer to truth. And that's why, as I said, the original neoliberal economists were scoffed at by the established Keynesians. Not because it was some new subversive or more correct theory, because it wasn't. It was an old idea that had already been disproven, that was just being reborn without any really actually new arguments. It was just, and so they rightly scoffed at, you're buying into this old discredited bullshit. You don't have any new arguments. You're just saying it all over again. And the neoliberal economists respond by basically, screw you, I'm just going to get billionaires to fund me so that I can drown you out. Instead of actually winning in the debate of ideas, because they can't win in the debate of ideas. And, then this ultimately led to shit like Reagan. And Margaret Thatcher and their forced neoliberal economic agendas pushed through over a lot of opposition, but the rich are on their sides. The media went soft on them, or often took their side, because the media is controlled by billionaires. And they got away with the crap. But yeah, the government's not your friend. The media does not tell you the truth. At least the mainstream corporate media does not tell you the truth. They pervert things. And I think this is something that even in America, so-called liberals and conservatives can agree on. The left and the right, that there's a lot of dishonesty. The problem is that the right-wingers have come to believe a perverted version of that, where they somehow think that things are rigged against them, when in fact the media is lying to push the ideas that they espouse too often. Or at least a twisted version of the ideas they espouse, because what most right-wingers would say they believe and what the media claims is true and claims to believe are very different things. Even with its right-wing bias, it's not pushing what ordinary conservatives push. It's pushing what the billionaire conservatives want. But yeah, I'm just pissed off a government official could recognize there's an issue potentially with an employer not paying their taxes and just be very blasé. Oh, it'll take months to deal with this, and not seemingly at all motivated to do anything about it, which may just be defeat, and the person being someone in the government, just this person being tired, if you will, feeling like they're not making any ground, like nothing is changing. And I can understand that perspective, but it's very frustrating when your very ability to survive depends on people giving you a hand and going the extra mile, and if they're just defeated and tired and exhausted by a system that's not meant to see justice done. At least it wasn't one of those people who actively commits injustice, just someone who just seems so tired. That's the way I can describe this guy. I guess I can sympathize with that. Anyways, but I could be reading it wrong. Could just be indifference or lack of caring. How the system screws me. It's only my read on it that it was just exhaustion. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between apathy and exhaustion. And people will use them as cover. My mother, for instance, will use as cover. She doesn't give a damn about a lot of things that affect her. She's the typical obnoxious moderate who's more devoted to peace than justice, who only wants incremental progress that benefits her. But she just claims, oh, she's too tired all the time. But it's very clear about the things she actually does get upset about or active about or not. It's a selfishness and apathy that really underlies it, unfortunately. Not that it's surprising. She came by it honestly from her parents who were just like that. I don't know why people don't like my criticizing family, but just because you're born to them doesn't mean that they're perfect people. They have their flaws and their strengths, but this is definitely a flaw. I met too many people like that, comfortable middle class people, or people who identify as middle class, because I'll tell you, my mother is not middle class. She is lower class. She is poor. She has suffered in poverty for decades, but she still thinks because she once had a good paying job right out of college that somehow she's still middle class. No. She absolutely qualifies as poor. But she will never let go of her pride. It's almost sickening, honestly. You've got to face facts and not let pride prevent you from, solidarity with other people who are suffering at the bottom of society just because you think you're better than them. Even while you're like barely surviving and you're just as badly off as many at the bottom. Well, to teach me humility, I suppose. To not be like the people I'm related to be better than that. A person doesn't just become better in something because they want to or inherent. That's arrogance, and that's no. To become a better person requires hard work on yourself and dedication to learning and to reflection, to self-improvement, and fortunately not many people in my family show that dedication. All right, well, I could sit here and complain about pompous, conceited, self-assured, middle-class arrogance all day, but and not to say everyone middle class, because I know many people in middle class who care deeply about people worse off than them. Just particular people I've known. Small handful of examples that stay on my mind. Some of them related to, some of them not. But it would be just obnoxious and not really make any important point. I will say this, viewers. Always be open to learning. It's when you stop learning that you start letting your own self-interest guide everything you think you know, and when you stop actively pursuing the truth. When you become part of the problem rather than part of the solution at that point. I respect more the conservatives who are just blatantly wrong about things than the moderate center-left individuals who are arrogant and refuse to learn and just think they know what's best. At least the frothing Trump voter cares about the world and they think they're making it better. They're not. But at least they're engaged in a very visceral way, in a way that many of these center-left individuals and sometimes center-right individuals I've known are just not engaged at all. They claim they have no ideology, but they do. They have the ideology of selfishness and an ideology that's astoundingly centrist and claimed choice to be supposedly non-ideological is itself an ideology in itself, a school of thought. It's astounding these people think that they can be non-ideological by choosing really just to reject anything that challenges the status quo, whether it's on the left or the right. It's not non-ideological. That's actually conservative in the true sense of the meaning, in terms of not wanting anything to change, rather than in the sense of the word conservatives, meaning those who want to conserve the power of the rich and dominant members of society. Those are both accurate uses of the term conserve, but they're very different senses of the word, of course. I'd like to get roasting here, tea plantation, and then probably call it quits on this. Hopefully if I sit here, I'll wake up a little bit. Hoping to do a Hearthstone 4 multiplayer video today. I think I've gone through the buffer on that, so folks should see it happen relatively soon if I do it. Wait, 16 minutes. This video always seems like they're going longer at this game than they are. I'd hoped to do a single player video yesterday, but then if I remember saying with, "Ooh, I'm too tired to cook anything," after saying they were going to cook something and leave me hanging for hours, and then exhausted late night. I mean, I would have maybe had the energy earlier, having to cook something up for myself. Very simple, because my long COVID, I don't have the energy for real meals, so just some like rice and stuff mixed into it. I now have the energy left to do a video. Hearthstone 4 at that point. And I need these videos because it's not for my own entertainment. But not, this is for my survival. If I don't build this channel and get it to where I can earn some money, especially with the way the government is screwing me out of SSDI, either because the employer didn't pay in, or even if it turns out that even if I get the employer to pay in, if it turns out I only earned 1 work credit instead of 2 that calendar year, then I'm screwed anyways, because universities are made exempt from paying in Social Security on their students, which is ridiculous. If you're going to go to grad school and you don't want to give people credit for going to grad school, I'd say fine, except that's really not fine, because people are going to grad school, investing themselves and trying to become productive members of society, and we should not punish that. Just like we shouldn't punish college, and we don't punish college because if you go right after high school, because Social Security disability doesn't start counting until after you're 21. So we should either start the counting after grad school so that you don't need as many work credits, or we should give people some kind of credit, even if it's like only giving them, 1 work credit a year or something. But there should be some sort of, honestly, reward for grad school, or at least not punished for it, which is what the current situation is. You have to make up that time with extra work credits later. And that creates a period where very often after grad school, people aren't covered for disability, and if they get in a car accident a couple years after grad school, they're screwed. If it leaves them disabled, say with brain damage or missing limbs or blind or God, whatever. Certainly if they get like a virus, like I got COVID and coronavirus, leaves you disabled, leaves more and more people disabled. We're up to over 144 million people worldwide with long COVID as of the last confirmed estimate that we know is credible. But that's already that's already more than 2 years old, that estimate. So the number is higher by now because it keeps going up as more people get long COVID. So it's probably like 160, 180 million now instead of the 144. Its journal was reading a comprehensive review, and I think it was Nature, or it might have been Boston Medical Journal, and they were talking about various things to do with disease. And yeah, 144 million was the number that was cited there. And it cites the source. You can see 65 million was an older number for the global long COVID total, and it's still erroneously cited in many publications because people haven't bothered to see how the estimates have changed. Turns out that that estimate was both way too low and the number of people was increased with long COVID. But when we estimated 65 million, the number was probably like 120 already, and now it's 144 at least. At least probably the true number, even when that was estimated, was at least 150. Like principal scientific research is you always lowball estimates like this because you get in trouble if you overestimate things, but you don't ever get in trouble for underestimating things, which is a problem. We should probably penalize people for lowballing the number of people with a disease as much harshly as we criticize them for overestimating. Then we'd get more accurate figures that would usually be a little higher, actually. But we don't, because the interests of the rich and the ruling class go towards lowballing disease figures, usually. Unless there's money to be made from treating the disease, then suddenly higher figures start coming out, usually from research funded by the pharmaceutical industry, but that's another issue. But yeah, it's one thing to not give people any credit for studying in grad school. It's another thing that if you work what would sometimes even a number of hours that could be considered full-time or almost full-time in grad school, you can still get no payroll tax and no Social Security disability insurance credit if your primary relationship with the university is still considered to be education or employment. So, you're a 3/4 time employee, but you're a full-time student. You're not getting any credit, even though you would have, working that much easily gone, 4 work credits in probably the first 3 to 4 months of a year, if not much sooner. If you're working in the private sector, you work for a university, you don't get any credit. It's ridiculous. It allows the universities to save a cent here and there on not paying payroll tax, but it really fucks over young people who get disabled early. It's not right. It's not right at all. And I get screwed by this because if you count my university employment, I absolutely qualify for SSDI, but you don't count it, and then I'm left chasing down an employer who didn't pay into the payroll, the IRS has no record of them to see if it was 1 or 2 work credits, because I know I made at least $2,000 working for this employer, but it has to be, I think, $2,400 that year to qualify for 2 work credits, and my memory says the number was around $2,100, so I might have fallen just short of getting that second work credit and end up with 19 work credits when I need 20. And just because of everything rounding down, even though there's a year where I had would have had 1.9 work credits, another year where I had 3.8, if you just round up the fractions, but because of the way the system works and the way it caps out where I can't earn more than 4, some years where if you could earn more than 4, I would have earned 20 work credits in certain years. Just in a single year qualified. Yeah, it's a fucked up system, and there's no interest in fixing it because it's very, very good at screwing over people who desperately need help and then blaming the victim. Saying, oh, it's your fault, you didn't work in it. No, I did work, and I didn't get credit for the work in your screwed up system. And I went to grad school, and then I got screwed by my family. They didn't help me move to an area where there were jobs in my field. I followed the advice about don't get into debt, so I borrowed as little student loans as possible. Didn't have the money to move to a major urban area without family help after grad school. When they reneged on they lived near a major city, and they reneged on letting me come and move back and stay with them while I applied to jobs. I applied to jobs in major cities, but saying I need for them to help me to provide relocation assistance because I couldn't even get an apartment in the city without money towards first class security broker. No employer would even interview me knowing I need relocation assistance. So I got screwed. And then after working in a rural area for a while, terrible pay with a period of, I should mention, with a period searching for jobs and getting told I was overqualified and people not hiring me for minimum wage jobs because I had a graduate degree. I finally got some work, and then the first job was an employer who apparently didn't pay into my payroll tax. submit forms to the IRS at all. I think that's because they probably wrongly classify me as an independent contractor. I don't know if they still have to file forms for independent contractors or if it's up to the employee. I'm assuming they wouldn't have to in such a situation. So by misclassifying me, they got away with it. Or maybe they just defrauded the IRS. Maybe they filed the forms, but they sent the wrong address and got lost in the mail. You know, I really don't know for sure. And I'll probably never know for sure because the employer doesn't even answer their phone when I call the number. Like I don't know. I should try calling from a different phone number of my own and see if it picks up. If it just goes to like this number cannot be reached, then maybe it's an issue with just a bad phone tree. But I called the accountant and that was still a valid phone number for the company, and that person never returned my call. So, um, right. I already got roasting here. I did say that was last time I was going to do, didn't I? Yeah, so we screw over grad students. We screw over young people who, are trying to make something of themselves by doing grad school, which in the past may have been excessive back when some of these systems were created. But nowadays, if you want decent earnings, you got to do something like grad school. Like what I was trying to do, I was trying to become a physician. And that's a long education process. That's 4 years in undergrad. You get to be like 22. You finish undergrad. You're already a year where you SSDI started counting and you weren't working because you were an undergrad. And even if you work while you're in school for the university, you don't get credit. And then you go to grad school. If you get straight into MD, it's 4 more years. And you could get disabled during those, or after, and you're already 5 years behind. You'd have to work for 5 more years before you'd be eligible for SSDI. So that's you wouldn't be eligible till the age of 31, and that's if there's no gap in employment and no period where you work part of the year but don't quite get the 4 work credits, because residents get paid the equivalent of less than minimum wage if there's any gap after med school. You could have a 31-year-old doctor who just went undergrad, med school, work, and doesn't qualify for disability because of insufficient work history. That's how fucked up the system is. And don't get me started on people who do PhDs, which can take more than 4 years quite often. You may be working in grad school, you may be TAing, doing research assistantships, but you're not getting any SSDI credit for it because it's for a university often. And if it's a 5-year PhD, because a lot of research doesn't do 4 years, you're even more screwed. Because every year in school, you're going to have to basically another year of work to offset that. But then you got older doing that work and you have to work half the time. So you're really gaining half a year when you work for a full year, because half. So you actually have to work for 2 years to offset 1 year of grad school. 2. So you can have like 33-year-old people who did PhD who might not be qualified for disability, despite not like any real gaps in their employment history. That's insane. It's a fucked up, evil system. I encourage you folks, resist it. Push back, fight back, protest, strike, boycott. Do anything you legally can, because the system is only going to get worse. And the worse it gets, the more powerful the billionaires become, the more they're able to fuck things up worse. So that the rate of decay accelerates, the worse things get. You have to push back before it's too late. Anyways, I wish you all the best. Take care of each other. Be kind to yourselves. May you always find a guiding star to lead you home. Adieu. And best luck.